Okay.
I think Ivy has already joined us for this last hour. Ivy, my good friend, whom I admire so very much, Ivy Nelson. You there, Ivy?
I am. Hi, Leilani.
Hi, hi. And then I think we have also, I don't know if she's on yet. We're waiting on Jessica. I'm not sure how to say her last name. I want to say Lottz or Lottz, who is from Shelby County. We'll have Michael come back. We're letting him take a little short break. So we're going to be talking about like overall digital transition, but I want to get into a little bit more of an intellectual level of the conversation, Ivy, and lean it from like where you've been and all the detail work that's been going on in Belton School District into sort of what are the things that you're seeing that are making your mind go, where does this go? And in terms of mutation over the long haul, and then maybe a little bit about the idea, like where does that long haul go? So, future. And then I want to talk about the culture shift that's really been happening in schools and districts all across America, because we've exposed a lot of holes in having to be so much more remote and so much more hybrid and everything. It's so flexible, and it's a transition on, not unlike what happened with retail when Amazon sort of came in and hammered the playing field. It's a culture shift. I mean, my mom didn't know how to shop on Amazon until I taught her, right? And but my generation, like, we figured it out on our own. There's 5-year-olds that figure out on their own how to buy things from Amazon. So we're in this moment of intellectual change and direction and wondering what the future holds. And we're also in a culture shift. And it has so many permutations. So Ivy, I'm going to have you go first. Oh, it looks like we also have Jessica who's joined. Jessica, I think you're on self-mute.
Yep, but I can unmute though when you need me.
Okay, good. So you're here, Ivy's here. I'm making sure that also our sponsor for this hour is here. Oh, Sarah, you're here. Okay, if everybody doesn't mind, I'm gonna have you sort of muddle on that question for a minute. Michael will be stepping back in here too. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Ivy. But I'm gonna unmute Sarah. Sarah, you're unmuted because I want you to share for a moment before we get into this, intellectual conversation with our 3 leaders here. And Sarah is one of my favorites. She's from D2L. She's one of our sponsors for today's hour. Sarah, do you need the presenter screen? Do I need to make you a presenter?
Hi, Leilani.
Hi.
Sure. If I've got a couple slides, I'd be happy to share.
Okay, well, I'm making you presenter, and I'm so excited about you guys sharing with us today and being part of all this, because I know that the companies in this space helping bring organization to what's going on in schools, you guys have been really hammered in the short term with like, let's all go, let's do this now. Okay, so you have the screen now.
Okay, let's see.
I think I handed you presenter status.
Open.
Yes.
Let's see. Peter.
And introduce yourself too along the way, Sarah, so everybody gets to know you. Sarah, you're a former educator who's landed over there at D2L, helping bring order and systems into school districts all across America right now, and probably working like a banshee, just heavily going. Did you find your sharing button at the very top?
I think so. Is it sharing?
Let me see what you're sharing. Oh, I think maybe. Nope. It should be under you. It says you're the presenter. So maybe what's happening is you have to go back to sharing. And share the right screen. Yep, now I see your screen. Yay, cute kids, lots of them. Okay, so we see your screen, so you can go ahead and speak to that now, Sarah.
Okay, awesome. Well, hi everyone. So like Leilani said, my name is Sarah Frank. I am with D2L. So we have been, as Leilani said, we have been really busy. And one of the things that I love about Learning Council is really how forward thinking it is. And up until this point, I think many people have thought a learning management system might be a nice to have, or something, a little further down the road when we get to doing more online or organizing everything a little more, and moving to supporting all students virtually or hybrid, or doing more with blended learning has really brought that focus back into the best way that you can do that, that's able to provide a safe system, a system that is reliable, that works for all students, and really meets all those needs for all those different programs you're using. And how do you do that? That's really where D2L, our Brightspace Learning Management System, really comes into play here. I'm sure a lot of you have been dealing with it's so hard to think of all these things that have been going on lately. But not only with devices, but it's, as a parent myself, I've been working through, Google is a fantastic program, but not really meant to support that fully virtual learning at home. So, having kids at home, it's, going here and now going there, and now where do you go? It's really hard, as a parent to manage it. And I can only imagine like what those kiddos are thinking too. So a learning management system is a perfect way to simplify that, not only for parents and students, but also for those teachers and administrators, to have all of your curriculum resources in one place, be able to track what they're doing, and just bring that all together to provide a strong platform that will give you the flexibility to support, online virtual classrooms. Maybe you want to do some station rotation and blended learning with your younger kiddos. Being able to document IEPs even in a learning management system. The flexibility and the options are really endless. And those are all things that we've been really talking with districts all across North America over the last several months, and really getting them set up to fully support those students, as this school year has been starting. Leilani, how am I doing on time? I know I just kind of talk sometimes, so making sure we're good here.
Yeah, I think you're good. A couple minutes.
Perfect. So as you're going through and you're evaluating, there's really a lot of key things to look for, but I think everyone fell back and was relying on Google over the last several months. And a great thing about D2L is that we work really well with Google. We work with your student information system, and really the goal here is to be seamless, make it as easy as possible for you, but also making it easy for your students and your teachers and your administrators. One of the things that we're hearing now is school's already started and we're just going to stick with what we have. I completely understand. You have so many things that you're balancing right now. When you're ready to talk and you're ready to look at a solution that can bring everything all in one, we'd love to talk with you guys a little bit more about, how we can provide equity, because that's always an ongoing piece. And regardless of how big or small, being able to work offline on a learning management system is crucial. Connecting with those parents, and then providing, a true partner. That's something I know we really value. Is we'll be with you from the beginning to the end and everywhere in between to make sure that you're well trained and supported through the whole process. We are a 2-time Cody winner for the best learning management system. And I know everyone is really thinking right now about just the students, but within the learning management system, you can also train your teachers. So even those teachers that are virtual, they still need to be learning as well. So you can do everything within Brightspace. We're very happy and excited to be sponsoring, Leilani and the Learning Council. You're doing some fantastic work, and I love these virtual events. So hopefully we can visit in person soon. Thank you.
Yeah, we all want to get back together, don't we? Yeah, that's the thing. Like right now, just realizing how much we miss everybody. It's It's kind of wild. Is that your last slide? Should I take back the presenter screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so back to my screen so we can talk to all these fine people. So, and Sarah, if you could stay on so we could wrap you back in and make comments towards the end about structure and where things are going. I threw the first question out with regards to the difference in where things are going structurally and also culture to Ivy, who's been mulling on it, haven't you, Ivy? Ivy's a brilliant mind. When we first met her, we're like, wow, Ivy. So I'm going to bring you in first, Ivy, to speak about that. And then Jessica, I'll restate the question because maybe you might have missed a little bit of it early on, and then back to Michael. So Ivy, you go first, please.
All right. So yesterday, when I shared about kind of our curriculum approval process and how we do that and how it works with our curriculum department, our technology department, with all of the software that's been, increased software purchases and technology purchases this year. And then we talked about just in general what our district is doing. And we kind of have a difference right now in our elementary to our secondary as far as the structure of how our virtual learning is going. So in our elementary, we have designated virtual teachers, and they have students who are completely virtual, so their whole class load is virtual, and they will have their morning meetings via Zoom in the morning, and they will, touch base with every student and then do live instruction on what the students will be doing later on that day. And then the students go and spend the rest of the day, however long it takes them to complete assignments throughout the rest of the day. Our secondary, on the other hand, is really doing traditional learning via Zoom. So that's kind of the difference that we have just within our own district. And I think, like you said, Leilani, the transition and the I can't remember the word you used, but that morphing from how things have always been in education to how things should be and what best practices look like in person and virtually, and that's completely different. And so as far as the student success rate, we haven't really gauged that much yet, but we have had parents, share for our secondary students that their kid is online all day long, and they're not okay with that. And we get to the back to the research of what does it look like whenever, how long should a student be in front of a screen, and how does that look when a student is, instead of going to first hour and then going to second hour and going to third hour, they're going to their first hour Zoom and then going straight into their second hour Zoom and then third hour Zoom. And so, where is the progress and where is that, going to naturally lead? Because that's just, exhausting teachers, exhausting students, exhausting parents. And not to say that elementary is doing it better or they're just doing it different, and it is different than a traditional in-person setting. So how they are handling virtual is set up, from the foundation. They have a designated teacher that is their virtual teacher, and then they have, for students who are in person in that same grade level, they have in-person teachers, and they are only with in-person students, so they're not mixing. But at secondary, when you have one theater teacher, how do you have an in-person theater teacher and a virtual theater teacher? You can't, clone teachers. So how do we do that without having our secondary do both, and so what's the answer? I don't know. But that's what we're doing, and that's where, and I think it's just going to naturally work its way out that, we need to rethink. And that's, some of the feedback that we had from parents in the spring when we asked for parents to fill out, all the surveys that I'm sure parents nationwide filled out, there were several parents who said, why isn't it just like in person? Why isn't my kid just getting on their computer and the teacher's talking to them and teaching them the lesson and then doing the activity with them? And well, because things look different when they're online learning, and best practices for online learning are not the same as best practices for in-person learning. And so and so how does but what are those best practices, and how do you implement those with limited resources and limited time to put them into practice? And so that is kind of where we are at in Belton right now.
Okay. Yeah, and I would characterize, Ivy, that's typical of so many places. And so I'm going to come back around to that, and I'm going to call on Jessica. Jessica, it's so nice to meet you. Did I say your last name right? Lottz?
You did.
Okay, great. Well, and I'm hoping to hear from you, from your perspective in research and performance management, a little bit about what's going on in Shelby, looking at achievement now in sort of a, altered structure, altered reality. Let's just call it the altered reality of the now. And what's happening for you? Introduce us to yourself and try to sort of follow that whole line of questioning.
Yeah, sure. I guess we can get to a point where the new normal just becomes the normal, unfortunately, after a while. So I'm Jessica Lottz. I've been with first Memphis City Schools, which then had a merger with our Shelby County School District in the county back in 13-14. And so I've been with one of those districts for 10 years. And I'm into my role currently with the Director of Research and Performance Management for about 4.5 years now. So just a landscape of how the district overall is approaching things. We are currently 100% virtual for all grades. We use most of our CARES Act money to distribute laptops to every student because we were not previously a one-to-one district. We had maybe 25,000 devices that students would rotate at school for different things, but now all students are equipped with a laptop at home. And then we also distributed a limited number of hotspots to students that we knew were economically disadvantaged and needed an internet connection in order to be able to work from home. So we've been into school for about a month now, and primarily it's a synchronous model. We use Microsoft Teams as our primary platform for teachers to be able to do live instruction with students. And that's mostly what's happening throughout the day. We don't have dedicated time where students must be working independently. So there are, I think, probably some of that screen time types of concerns that Ivy also mentioned there. But Teams is primarily how they're working, but they also have the Florida Virtual School Curriculum that we are housing in Canvas as our learning management system. And then in K-8 in particular, a lot of students are also doing some work on iReady for a little bit of independent work there. So that's just kind of the big landscape of the district. And then within my team, in the research world, usually we're all kind of focused on those longitudinal, stable types of analysis, like program evaluation. How do we know this program's effective and what kind of impact it's having on student achievement? But with this year, we pumped the brakes on that for the time being, just until we can get some better, more stable baseline data in our new normal and with the type of outage we had with COVID before we reopened school. And instead, we're really focusing this semester on rapid learning cycles. So one of the 3 teams within my department is continuous improvement, and we're kind of embodying that throughout the whole team. So just getting quick reads of information through survey and focus group feedback, through analyzing our daily activity data with students, with attendance rate versus login rate versus lessons completed online, those types of things. And then we're also doing some observations of classrooms every week. And we're not instructional experts. We are actually doing this just knowing that everybody is starting from zero, learning how to do remote learning. And so what we've been looking for is more just the logistics and the flow of how these lessons have gone, what strategies seem to really improve student engagement, or what kind of dynamics might discourage that, as well as just highlighting best practices that we've seen in a lot of classrooms to share across the board. And so if you were at the panel that my colleague Chris Hill presented at yesterday, he went into a lot of detail on that. So those are kind of the big things that we're doing. And then we're also publishing dashboards in Power BI that principals and school district leaders can look at for monitoring daily online activity, and also the deployment of all those devices I talked about. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Wow. Yeah, and probably the sheer size of your district, it's kind of been a rough ride. Am I right? It's kind of like everything went wild, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps I would say, I think when we look across the country, we certainly had things to learn and some issues to deal with, but, we haven't had anything catastrophic. Like, luckily we weren't part of the great Zoom outage that I think a lot of districts experienced in late August. So that didn't happen for us. And then we haven't had, some of the vendor issues that some of the other large districts have with just being able to deliver things on time. I genuinely think in the time that I've been with the district, the device deployment in particular is probably one of the most impressive things I've ever seen a large bureaucratic organization pull off in a very short amount of time. So, those are all good things, but we certainly have a lot to learn. And I think we're probably going to start getting more of that stakeholder feedback on what remote learning should look like going forward, so that we can give students more of a balance with time on screen, actively participating with the teacher versus time to do independent work and other things. And then, at some point we will also have to figure out how to do true reentry in brick and mortar buildings, which I know we're kind of probably among the last districts to be doing any version of that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a different moment, and so I'm gonna go to Michael next, and then I'm gonna pelt you guys with another round of question and perspective. So Michael, we didn't get to talk about kind of what's happening on the technology scene with you. You want to characterize that a little bit for us, like what's happening? I think you're muted. Oh, I have to unmute you. Oh, sorry about that. For some reason you were muted on my side. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Well, whatever Memphis did, we've done it one bit better. Let me just say that.
It's a competition.
Actually, Shelby County and Davidson County, which is Metro Nashville, we had a unique circumstance related to athletics because we were the only two districts in the state that didn't open our athletics up. So that created a whole different array of issues for us. But getting back to technology, I was sitting there listening to Jessica, and I'm just going to echo pretty much everything she said. I mean, the distribution of over 15,000 laptops or something like crazy number. No, I'm sorry, 60,000 laptops was really remarkable. We've got, but as I talked about in my presentation, our leadership is fantastic in the district. It is now. We haven't always enjoyed the greatest, but now we have a fantastic director who is a product of Nashville schools, and she gets it. And so her whole team gets it. So yeah, I was listening to everything carefully, and it's almost identical. It's been impressive. Our kids are logging on. One of the things that I am trying to get the district to do, but I'm definitely getting my staff to do, is that before all this happened, we never thought about this happening. So we never really planned on it. I mean, we saw technology growing and growing and growing, but we never really planned on this. All of a sudden this happened, and now we're actually doing a pretty decent job at it. So my push is to think about and be ready for the next thing. What could possibly be the next, so that there needs to be a think tank of what could happen next if we truly intend on continuing to educate our young people. So for my staff, for example, I said to them, one of the things that you're always concerned about and you're always talking about is how you can't get a hold of parents. Well, now, because it was sent out by the state level, then the city level, now the district level, now you've probably have, 75% of your parents that you can easily get a hold of, when before they weren't always even. So what are you going to do to maximize that when we get back to in-person learning? And if it goes only back to in-person learning, what are you going to do to maximize that? Because you've never seen that before. And so start thinking about the next evolution after all this starts to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me kind of, I think, Ivy, you've probably heard me talk about this a little bit because you and I met in person, and I think we sort of threw this out there last time we were in your neighborhood. Jessica, I don't know that you and I have got to meet in person yet, but I'm looking forward to it when we get back on the road. And Michael, you too. But I'm going to bring back up some framing for the research that the Learning Council's really been looking at. And so while I'm doing this, sort of tap your inner global consciousness with your coworkers and your environment so you can answer back kind of your idea of where things may go for you and your institution. So, we put out this software model architecture. Chris McMurray talked about this in the hour before Michael spoke when we were talking about digital learning experience. And one of the reasons that we put this software model architecture together was because somebody needed to make sense of the 7,000 plus ed tech companies that were out there and all the different array of things they do across the entire savanna of potentials. And the middle box about routing forms and check sheets and workflow caught our attention as the thing that was missing the most in the market. So everything is still teacher centric in terms of distribution model. And everything has to go through the teacher. And it's a bureaucratic sort of pyramidal. There's people at the top, and then there's the next layers of bureaucracy, and then you get all the way down to the teacher, and then they serve down to the student. It's not the model you're going to find in most of corporate America anymore, who's long since left the industrial age. And the mutation that we think we're seeing as a Learning Council in our research, just looking at places like Lambersville ISD in California and Classical Academy in San Diego and some of the other ones, is moving to more of a network matrix model. And it's already in that mutation in the forced remote and forced hybrid, but it's an uncomfortable mutation because, like Ivy, like you were saying, young kids on Zoom all day long, hard, really hard. It's hard for me. I have to tell you, we're on these 5-hour meetings in the presentment of all this data per region, 2 days in a row. I'm exhausted at the end. I just, I'm a pretty energetic person. So it's like, wow, how do other people do it? How do kids do it who have an attention span of a gnat? Like, how do they do it? So the workflow personalization learning experience, the ability to set up really 100% personalization, which means not tweaking the same lesson, but resting the entire distribution model on the back of technology and then inserting teachers effectively for their fantasticness at the right interval is really where we see the future going. We used to call it the Uberization of learning as a forthcoming future model, because Uber says, oh, you want to ride as soon as you hit the app, right? Pretend it's a student hitting that point in the map. Oh, you're on point 1015B of math. Okay, good. This means this. Let's say you hit this point, and like Uber, you hit that, and it goes, oh, the nearest neighbor, using the nearest neighbor algorithm, finds the nearest driver. Hey, do you want to pick this guy up? He comes, picks you up. You have a transaction, and then at the end, it's over, right? The transaction is done. Now you're back to your stair step of whatever you're going to be doing in life. Maybe you're at the airport now, so you take off on a plane. If you're a student, you take off to the next step in math. So you had your transactional moment with the teacher. The teacher didn't have to figure out how to discipline you, how to call you to order, blah, 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 because you're self-paced and you're being run by a dynamic real-time learning management system. This kind of sounds like outer space sort of learning. I mean, a lot of people, when we talk about this, they're like, what are you even talking about? We don't get it. But I want to turn back to you guys, and I want to have you think, what are you already seeing that's demanding real personalization and a change in your structure? What kind of little things have been happening around you that are indicating that we're in a mutation period? Because we see this on a national scale, right? We see a level of pain like we've never seen before, and we're identifying not the moment, but the structure as the problem. So, Ivy, what are your comments?
Yeah, I think, the pain is from trying to do things the way that we always have, and keeping that routine and that normalcy, and having, you know, and like I compared in our district, the elementary structure for virtual and the secondary structure for virtual. And, you know, even our elementary teachers who are doing virtual in a different way, and kind of changing that, you know, traditional format, they're still being caught in, you know, they're still in a classroom in the school and doing cafeteria duty and recess duty and bus line duty and all of those other things that their, you know, colleagues are doing with their in-person students. And so kind of rethinking, you know, that structure too, and going, you know, it affects the building as a whole, and having those, you know, and then substitutes, you know, there's a huge issue with finding substitute teachers, you know, in every district across the country. You know, we have very few people that want to volunteer to go into schools and possibly expose themselves to whatever germs there might be. And so we have teachers subbing for other teachers, and, you know, our virtual teachers who have sometimes a larger class load and then more material that they have to create because they have to pre-record videos to share, and, you know, those things are then also subbing in classrooms. And so just the, you know, the cascading effect it has on an entire building, really, and then, you know, throughout the district.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of the leadership that's looking at, like, they're building oriented and they're human oriented. Like, do I have a human in this classroom running all the children? So their mind thinks in that fashion rather than, I don't have a human in there today, but I can grab this other person who's a paraprofessional. I can put them there, or maybe it's an online thing, and I can grab somebody over the internet who's 3 states away to teach that today. So
Yeah.
that network modal, you know, that network mode thinking is not extant yet in this market, but that's what we're starting to see be forced to be happening, because in a lot of the really rural areas, they can't get the teachers. They have no one to teach science, right? So it's like we're in a moment. So, you know, so coming back around, I don't know if I should leave that up for you or not. Let me know if you want me to. But coming back around to you guys, Jessica, I kind of threw you for a loop. You just met me, and I'm like throwing you these big lofty questions. So take it for where you will, as you see fit.
Yeah, I really couldn't have said a lot better than what Ivy just did about, you know, the things that demand personalization. I guess the things that I'm thinking about are really some of the observations I've done and my team has done in classrooms these last few weeks. And, you know, a lot of what we're trying to figure out is just, what are those little micro moves that some teachers do that just make the instruction feel a little bit more normal and hopefully more engaging than, you know, than most of us could probably come up with. And I mean, I think like the single most impressive lesson that I saw was a 4th grade art teacher. And the thing that she did that, you know, I think we take for granted when students are fully in person is she constantly made sure they understood that she knew that what they were doing and how they were doing, and not in like a school marm, you know, accountability kind of way, but it just, if a student happened to come in 5 minutes late, as soon as they came in, she would say, "Hey, Johnny, you know, I noticed you just came in. Do you need any help getting up to speed? Let me quickly tell you what we're doing." Or she would really pick up good visual cues from the students' video feeds of if they had a question that they weren't verbalizing. And I think things like that, you know, it's a lot easier to do when you're physically in a classroom where you can kind of walk up and down desks and see what everybody's doing. But she just, instead of kind of just doing the let me call on a student at a time or pose this discussion question, she kind of constantly let every student know, especially the passive students and those that weren't verbalizing what they might need. You just felt her presence the whole time with the whole class, and they were incredibly excited and responsive, and probably also excited to, you know, get to do something fun like art. But I think there's things like that that we could also be capturing right now to try to really encourage other teachers to do, because it's just hard to not go into that, let me copy paste from what I'm used to doing and how I'm used to doing it in a lesson, but not figuring out ways that I can really adapt some of that relationship building in this type of context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's always like tweaks, right? Like, yeah, definitely a lot of tweaks. So coming back to you, Michael, your thoughts on structure for the future, because you're in a very unique environment where there's probably a need for a lot of very straight on discipline, right? What I'm talking about when I talked about a model shift is that the discipline is centralized into maybe a different sort of structure, like a giant homeroom, house Gryffindor, house Slytherin, like Harry Potter world, right? And kids are flighted out to classes and intersected in different ways, like Uber takes people in different directions. This is wild. It's something I want you to sort of wrap your mind around before we answer a little bit, because I'm trying to have you translate your existing structure into a different model. And would that even work at all? And what's your opinion?
Okay. Well, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about an hour or so ago. As the principal, I've noticed that the same teachers that are excellent in the in-person environment are equally as excellent in the virtual world, and those that aren't, and those you're always having to coach up and support and sometimes admonish, are the same ones that you're having to do the same thing virtually. So I look at teachers, and we talked about that. I don't want the other panelists to think, well, this guy's so hard, because it's not like that at all, but I am straightforward in the expectation or what's best for themselves and what's best for the kids. So, you get to choose. If you're a teacher out there and you're obviously, we have to stay home now. Okay, now they want us going back virtually. You get to decide if you're amazing or not. You get to decide if you're going to copy and paste, and you get to decide whether you're going to recreate or reinvent or evolve into this fantastic virtual teacher. Because I told my staff in March up front, I said, please keep in mind that there will come a time of reckoning for all of us where people are going to ask us why and how and who, kind of like what we're doing right now. And it will, we're not going to, this school and my staff and myself, this school is not going to be on the side of, well, we didn't do that. We didn't think about that. We're going to explore every option. We're going to collaborate with as many and most people as possible. But we got to keep in mind something too, folks, and that is the kids that we're dealing with now are the kids who want to be engaged, and the kids whose parents are making them be engaged, and then a few reluctant. But we have a good percentage of our kids who are the same kids that have a hard time getting to school or live in poverty, or even when they come to school, they're not engaged. And so we got to be careful moving forward about our equitable access for these children as well. And so the key to that is, which I think is a silver lining in a lot of this stuff that we're going through, is a silver lining is that our teachers have had to, most of them were doing fantastic anyways, but now that they have more access to parents, and now that they have more parents who are actually involved, and we've got parents across the state asking, we had one district, they wanted the parents to sign a memorandum that they wouldn't eavesdrop on their kids' lessons, which I thought was ludicrous. But we've got parents sitting in on lessons, even high school lessons, and asking questions and those kind of things. And so, we have to be mindful that there's a great population of kids that aren't logging in, aren't into any kind of schooling at all, but they still, so we have to continue to personalize our approach much more rigorously than maybe we've ever done before. And that's kind of where I stand with this. So you say personalized. So I've done probably 20 or 30 home visits to deliver computers and hotspots. And in most cases, they didn't know how to log in. So they'd invite me in wearing my mask and everything, and I'd log in for them and even sit there for 15 minutes. And then they'd put on Twitter, I can't believe the principal came over. Well, why can't you believe the principal? Asked me the same question, but Dr. Steele, why do you come in the cafeteria and push a garbage can around and collect our trash for us? Because I want to show you about teamwork, and I want to show you to be proud of your school, and those kind of things. So we have to be ready at the moment to continue to evolve in our personalization of how we're conducting our business, because at this point we have no other choice, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a really great viewpoint, and I see that you guys all recognize we're in like a mutation moment. And things are happening that have never happened before. And we're watching aspects of that sort of bubble out. And maybe we don't realize it, but we're kind of making mental notes along the way. And I ask a lot of leaders to do this, make those mental notes, even keep a diary if you can, because it's all going to be useful later, because this could happen again. We could have another national disaster. We could have another virus leak out of somewhere and come get us. And so the thing is that we're learning things we never learned before. And I'll mention one, and then I'm gonna come around to you guys to talk about something you learned, you know, maybe personally, or you observe somebody else learning for the first time ever. And one of the things that I've learned from a lot of other people, it's not like I personally experienced this, but a lot of people have mentioned, a lot of administrators we've had join us for these webinars have said, you know, the shy kids that never raised their hand before in live class, they were like the kid in the back with a hoodie on and like full blow. All of a sudden we're doing online learning. That kid's like, you know, hitting the question panel constantly, typing stuff up, chatting up the teacher, emailing in the middle of the night, you know, like they're in, like this is great for them. They don't have to be around humans anymore. I don't know what's happened, but they're totally in. This is like a totally different thing we weren't expecting to happen. And then the other kids maybe, and I'm going to characterize them as, you know, the sort of the maybe sports kids, theater kids, you know, they were the kids who are like, you know, they're into the crowds and they were always engaged, right? But now online, they're not, right? Some of them are AWOL completely. They don't see the point, because if they can't be with other people physically, they don't see the point of school at all. So they're not even showing up. So that's something I learned, and I thought that was a really interesting thing to learn. So back to you, Ivy. Anything that you know you've learned along the way or watched other people learn?
Well, your comments just now made me think of my son, who is a second grader, and he is doing in-person learning this year. And so we have a, you know, minimum distance between desks of 3 feet, 6 feet if you can get it, and keeping your mask on all day. And I asked him how everything's going, and I said, this year's really different, isn't it? And he said, yeah. And I said, do you like it? He said, well, he's like, you know what I do really like? That kids aren't up in my space all the time. And so he likes having that. He likes social distancing for sure. But then in Missouri, and I know that we're the Tennessee-Kentucky panel, but I am actually in Missouri, and we are an ADA state. So we get funding based on our average daily attendance. And I don't know what it is. I know that in other states near us, that is not the case. And so I'm wondering in Tennessee and Kentucky how you get funding based on, if you get funding from your state based on attendance, because that is something that I am hoping will change on a large scale for the state of Missouri, that they will realize that yes, getting kids to school and getting kids learning is important, but playing that attendance game is just exhausting. And in this situation where you have in-person and virtual, and your virtual kids can count for this much percentage and your in-person kids count for this much, but if you're an in-person kid that has to quarantine for 2 weeks, then, you know, your percentage would only be, you know, up to 96% or whatever that, you know. And so just, you know, let's just get over this whole average daily attendance thing and really do, you know, funding based on what really matters. And so I'm wondering what the other districts here do there.
Yeah, and Ivy, I think, didn't the Fed sort of order a down, like for the Fed side CARES Act money, didn't they order waivers on that? I think they did. I think it was part of the CARES Act. I don't know. I got to go check it out now. I don't want to be a liar about that, but I'm pretty sure.
Well,
the
and
Fed's up for.
Yeah, like our state Department of Elementary and Secondary Education have come out with different things. Like it's been in phases of, oh wait, now here's a code that you can put in. So when kids quarantine, you don't have to switch them from in-person to the virtual code, like put this code in and it means they're just quarantining. Because what was happening was we were switching kids from, okay, you're in person with this teacher, oh, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks because someone in your family tested positive. So then we switch them to virtual for 2 weeks and they're assigned to this completely different teacher for 2 weeks. And then
Oh, wow. Wow,
back.
how messy.
Yes, and so then the state's like, well, no, we can do this code instead, and so then we're using that code for the state, and now they're staying with that teacher, and so, you know, because as we have, you know, as flu season comes on as well, you know, we have kids who are getting the flu or getting, you know, runny noses and things like that are sent home and may not have it, but you know, they're still needing to maintain those connections to their true teacher. But yeah, it's been kind of messy on that side of things.
Yeah, well, yeah, Ivy, thanks. Thanks for being my friend and introducing me to a whole nother of a level of insanity going on. Like, you know, I don't want to think about, but yeah, it's out there. Okay, Jessica, over to you. Lessons learned, things observed.
Yeah, I think the big one, and it's something that I think there's still a lot for us to learn as somebody in a research environment is always thinking about, but I do think this gives us a real opportunity just to rethink our school structure in general, for exactly some of the reasons you guys mentioned earlier, that yeah, there's certainly some students that are going to struggle a lot more in this environment, especially if we don't have built-in ways for them to just have that great informal social interaction that sometimes is the best thing about going to school. But there's also other things we could be thinking about, right? That we have this picture in our mind of everybody does these roughly hour-long sessions. They rotate class to class. They're sitting in a desk for 6 to 7 hours every day. And I think that with us, investing a lot in having this one-to-one capability, there's just so many other ways that we could think about school, whether or not it's in person or virtual from now on. Like I definitely come from the mindset of that project-based learning and experiential learning being really important, and truthfully, a lot more like how the work world works later on, of having those opportunities to know what the bar is, the assignment is, and be creative in how you get to the solution and come up with your idea or product at the end of that. So I hope that we kind of think through that. And then I also just think for us as a district that in a typical year does struggle from time to time with attendance and absenteeism, I also just see a real power in being one-to-one as allowing for some of those opportunities for students to still be able to receive instruction and learn when they have barriers like transportation and bad weather and mild illness, that they could still, work online, but maybe shouldn't be around other students. And there's just a parallel, I think, with that in the working world. My whole team, I'm in my office, but my whole team is still remote, and they've just done a really tremendous job of accomplishing as much or more as they would being in the office here. And so I think that's like another thing that we can all learn from this, is just realizing that it's not the physical location or the schedule structure that works, that makes everything work. It's about giving everybody clear expectations and giving them some freedom and flexibility, but the right resources to get it done.
I agree. So Michael, over to you. Lessons learned and observation. It might not even be your own, but what you saw other people do.
Well, I realized that I really could work from home and run the whole school, so I'm going to petition for that when we get back in full cycle. Just I want to work from home. I would love that, and just keep the paycheck coming, and I'll make some decisions and sign some checks. Maybe I'll come in on Fridays and sign some checks and then be done with it. Now, I think I've listened to my other colleagues. I think that they're spot on. Again, I think I answered this question, the last question, just being able to foresee the future, at least having the conversation that things are coming that we haven't seen before. Heck, this is so unprecedented, it's ridiculous. I mean, but it could be something different next year, or it could be something 10 years from now, but at least be mindful to think through and have the conversations, and then go from there.
Good, good. Well, I think this was an excellent conversation. I learned a lot from you guys today. And I wish we could have been together with you. I wish we were coming out physically to have an event in your area. Maybe we'll get to do that late next year. I think we've already made up our mind. We're not going to be able to do anything maybe until fall of next year, in terms of actually coming out again. But I'm betting I get to meet you one of these days, as Learning Council gets back on the road with our full workshops again, and sort of brings even a higher level of really where this is all going and lessons learned and all that stuff. And I really want to thank you each for sharing with us today and our national audience. We'll be getting out this recording in a little while. It takes us at least a week to get everything edited through and then gotten out, maybe a little bit longer than that. Ivy, you're a joy to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leilani. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and Jessica, so great to meet you. Proud of your district. Thank you also.
Thanks.
Yeah. And Michael, you're awesome. You're awesome. I'm sending you a big virtual hug.
I'll take it. I just got it. Thank you. That felt great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. All right, good. Well, thank you guys all for being with us today. I'm going to wrap this up now, and say, another big shout out to our amazing sponsors. I'll have to tell you, I've been on a lot of phone calls with people, and these companies are out there. They're in the war with you. They are fighting, and they need all the help they can get as well. But they're doing things right now that I've never seen. The speed of change in the development world and the new offerings like Randa Solutions talked about today, amazing stuff. So I want to thank all of you guys for being with us today. And I'm going to be ending off here. If you haven't downloaded your handouts, you have 20 seconds to do that right now. I'm going to keep this open, but myself on mute before I close out the whole webinar. But you guys are all free to move about the country again virtually. And thanks for being with us today. This is Leilani Cawthon, your host, publisher and CEO of Learning Council and Grandmaster Edu Jedi Leadership Society. Thank you again, all. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Leilani.
Welcome, Eric. Thanks for being with us.